Welcome, this is a recorded session of the Post-Quantum Cryptography Conference of the PKI Consortium. This conference would not have been possible without our sponsors, PQ Shield, SSL.com, Entrust, Keyfactor, HID Global, and the organizational support of the Post-Quantum Cryptography Working Group of the PKI Consortium, and in particular, Entrust, Keyfactor, and Logius. Would you like to join the PKI Consortium? Go to pkic.org/join, or contact us if you would like to become a sponsor.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name, for those of you I haven't met yet, is Chris Hickman, Chief Security Officer at Keyfactor. And I'm being told to go this way, so I'll go this way. Excellent. We got some very interesting sessions today, taking us up to the lunchtime break. So we'll start with, no further ado, let me introduce to you Solomon Ahmad. Solomon is a research engineer at Cloudflare. And if you happen to see his colleagues Luke's presentation yesterday, building upon some of the lessons learned, and very excited to see what comes out of this. So Solomon has a keen interest in product engineering and security research, and he brings his expertise in internet measurement and applied machine learning to tackle the cybersecurity challenges at Cloudflare, which obviously, as we learned yesterday, and we'll learn more today, is on a very massive scale. So please join me in welcoming Solomon.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Well, then, thank you for the introduction. So my talk today will be about some key insights that I'll be sharing from our own post-quantum migration at Cloudflare, along with the recent large-scale study that we conducted in analyzing post-quantum compatibility of TLS 1.3 servers across the web. So to kick it off, and before I dive into more details, let me give you a quick introduction to Cloudflare. So apart from providing like a developer's platform and a zero-trust suite for enterprises, we also operate our CDN services. Today, we power approximately 20% of the internet of our websites. And to put this into perspective, we currently process around 63 million HTTP requests per second on average, which roughly corresponds to 10 to 15 billion TLS connections per second, providing us a strong ground for post-quantum TLS compatibility testing overall. Right. So in our CDN setup, we operate a reverse proxy. So we act as a reverse proxy for our customers. And so for the first segment of our connection, that is from the visitor or the end user to our data centers, in that connection, we're acting as a server. Then we have our internal connections for our internal routing and optimization purposes. And in the last and the third segment, we have the upstream connection to our customers' origin servers, or the customer who's providing the website content. And this is where we are acting as a client. So what we want is we want to optimize for performance and security at each of these three key steps. And our goal, and when we talk about our post-quantum migration, what we want is, like, we want all of our connections in all of these three categories to be post-quantum secure. But what do we mean by a post-quantum secure connection on the internet? Remember that the post-quantum migration for TLS specifically can be broken down into two key parts. For example, this is where you have the post-quantum key agreements, and we also have the post-quantum signatures. And it's very important that we distinguish between the two. So first, the post-quantum key agreement. The key agreement mechanism allows two parties to establish a shared secret for encrypting a web connection. So if we don't act quickly right now, a lot of our encrypted connections that we established today could be decrypted in the future by a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So to counter the risk of harvest now and decrypt later attacks, migrating to post-quantum secure key agreements is crucial today. And in line with this urgency, we at Cloudflare have been actively adopting the post-quantum secure key agreements, for example, For the first segment of the connection from coming to our visitors, we have added support for post-quantum key agreements since 2022. And it's like we're happy to say like around more than 30% of connections are already post-quantum secure using the MLChem hybrid, and that graph is also visible at Cloudflare Radar. For our internal connections, like teams across the organization have been building migration inventories and assessment plans, and we have already migrated a lot of our most sensitive connections over to post-quantum secure ones. And for, in the end, like for customer-facing connection, for the upstream connections, we added support for our customers to opt in their servers to post-quantum secure key agreements. We see a modest adoption of 1% right now, but we expect that number to grow over time. Well, the second migration is about the post-quantum signatures, as we know, or the digital signatures. This migration is less urgent than the key agreements because there's less immediate concern about active attacks like the harvest now decrypt later. However, we cannot delay as the challenges that we have with digital signatures are far more complex and will require more time, as we have seen in other talks as well. For example, for digital signatures, we have a large number of stakeholders that are involved. Like unlike key agreements, like we only have the client and the server. And I don't know what happened. OK, we're back. We only have the client and the server. But for signatures, we have multiple parties, like HSM managers. We have CAs, server operators, and so on. And in the future, we can also expect like different legislative and regulatory requirements, which may impose some unique requirements. For example, we might want pure certificates in one case or hybrid certificates in other cases. More importantly, for TLS specifically, a typical connection involves around 5 signatures and 2 public keys. And the effort required, so not counting the DNSSEC and OSCP in general. So this can further complicate the process for migration because of the number of things that we want to migrate. For deeper dive into this complexity, some potential workaround, I recommend you go over my colleague's Luke Valenta's session from yesterday on making post-quantum signatures work in the Web PKI again, where he talked into more details about some of these workarounds that we are doing. But in short, we're trying to do some internal testing on MLDSA and also work on further efforts in reducing the number of signatures that are required in a typical TLS connection. OK, so with all that important context in mind, let me bring back the focus back to why I'm here today. Having standardized post-quantum signatures or algorithms is a significant step, but migrating all these systems to using these new algorithms is going to require some effort from all of us. The progress so far has been positive, but has not been entirely smooth sailing. And there's still a long way to go in overall. So it's important to understand how we have got to this point so far and reflect back on some of the fundamental challenges that we have faced. So let's dive in. So why is the migration hard? Well, despite the careful design of internet protocols to be upgradable by nature, their flexibility in practice is often reduced due to protocol ossification, which refers to the condition when faulty or legacy implementations resist new changes. Additionally, the internet, as we know, is not a controlled internal network. It's a vast and diverse ecosystem of varied devices and capabilities. And some devices can be updated, others cannot be, which just increases the complexity of the efforts that are required. We have seen similar hurdles happening a few years ago during the migration from TLS 1.2 to TLS 1.3. And the early version of TLS 1.3 were almost undeployable. And for reasons like some mailboxes could not handle the new version negotiation properly, which caused a lot of connections to break. To address this, the community came up on the consensus to have TLS 1.3 look very similar to TLS 1.2 on the wire. And so the implementations could not tell the difference between the two, and so the middle boxes would not fail on seeing this new version. It was a painful journey, but after years of effort from the community, today we have over 90 like around 93% of our connections coming to Cloudflare already on TLS 1.3. So on a similar note, today we face another significant migration challenge for the internet, which is to transitioning to post-quantum secure TLS 1.3. And as part of our efforts, we have tested post-quantum compatibility of our customer servers and networks that we provide CDN services for. And many of the servers have restricted access and only accepts connection from Cloudflare. So as we act their reverse proxy, so this gives a very unique perspective and position to perform such measurements. And we found out like some of the results as a result of scanning were quite surprising, revealing protocol ossification in places we didn't expect. For instance, by scanning our customers' origin servers, we found that around 0.34% of the origin servers would break when establishing a post-quantum connection. At a first glance, like it might look like a very small number, like it's less than 1%, but it's at internet scale that we operate is still quite significant. It has a lot of number of servers that break. So one thing is clear: the migration is not just a flip of a switch. It requires a lot of effort. And so let's take a quick look at what are some of the fundamental challenges that we have faced. Right. So lesson number 1. Post-quantum key shares and signatures are much, much larger as compared to the ones generated using classical algorithms. Take, for example, the key share sizes generated by the classical ECDH, or which is X2 to X25119, which is only 32 bytes, compared to MLChem 768, which is over 1 kilobyte, which is almost different of 37 times. So what impact does it have for example, from TLS connections? Well, in a TLS connection, the ClientHello packet that is sent when establishing or doing the TLS handshake contains the key shares needed to establish an encrypted connection. And sometimes, when we're using a post-quantum key share, that we can exceed the maximum transmission unit, or what we call as the MTU size, which is typically on the internet around 1,500 bytes. And when this happens, the single ClientHello message gets split into multiple TCP segments during transmission. So due to protocol ossification, many implementations do not anticipate a ClientHello to be fragmented or split, leading to some connection failures. And in most cases, we observed the fragmented messages results in the server responding with the connection close for quick or a TCP reset for a TCP connection. And this often indicates that the server or some middle box that is on the path is unable to handle the fragmented ClientHello packets. Our friends at Google have been actually tracking this specific incompatibility and working on addressing these buggy implementations. I also reference the tldr.fail page if anyone's curious to know. But in our scans, we saw from the 0.34% of our servers that were failing, about a very minor portion of it, like 0.02% of those were consistently failing when they had fragmented ClientHello coming onto their servers. Which means unless they're fixed, we can't migrate or have post-quantum connections for those servers at all. Talking about post-quantum signatures, a typical connection, as I talked about before, involves 5 signatures. If you use MLDSA for all of those, we add about roughly 14 to 15 kilobytes of data. To optimize this, we can adopt a more clever approach, maybe use the faster MLDSA for the online TLS handshake signature and for enabling quick signature verification and signing, while using the slower Falcon or soon-to-be FNDSA for the other parts of the certificate chain, and also for the SCTs that's coming from certificate transparency, since they can be created offline. They do not need to be online during a TLS connection. This optimization could reduces the added data to around 7 kilobytes, but the question remains, is this reduction enough to prevent protocol ossification bugs and ensure compatibility? So we had a look. We looked at the number of missing requests by increasing the size of the certificate chain we sent back to our clients. So around 10 kilobytes and 30 kilobytes, we saw the largest bump in loss of packets and failures over the network. So this indicates that many clients or middle boxes struggle to handle certificate chains that are larger than 10 kilobytes, which poses a significant challenge in the future for high-bit certificates in the open net. The reality is, we can't change everything at once. The deployments are inherently slow, and if everyone starts sending these large certificate chains, we will see a lot of breakage happening. And one potential solution in TLS, due to its flexibility, is to allow the clients to tell which signatures type they support, and the server could then send a tailored certificate back for those preferences, either classical or post-quantum. However, in the world that we live today, a lot of servers only support one type of certificate, so there's still some effort that will be needed into this direction. Right, so this brings me to lesson number 2, is not assuming fixed values for fields that are meant to be extensible by nature in protocols, especially for example, in TLS, the ongoing migration to post-quantum cryptography was possible because of this flexibility that the protocol has, thanks to these extensible fields, for example, the supported group field or the signature algorithms field. And a lot of our scans, some of our scans reveal that this flexibility does not always play out in practice, in reality. So for instance, we saw that a handful of external servers failed to successfully establish a TLS connection when non-existent key exchange algorithms were received by them. The expected behavior is that the server will renegotiate valid known cryptographic parameters, but they were only accepting specific hard-coded key agreements values, for example, only accepting ECDH and not accepting any other algorithm, even if that other algorithm is bogus or it's valid. In other case, they would just accept those specific algorithm and won't show that flexibility that TLS provides. Luckily, having learned from our past experiences, the internet community has standardized a mechanism called grease in RFC 8701. Typically, browsers will advertise term identifiers for extensible fields in TLS so that misbehaving servers are caught by the action of greasing. For instance, browsers may send 2 key shares, one valid and one bogus one, just to make sure that we maintain this flexibility into this key agreement process. Though some ossified implementation exists, as I talked about in the last slide, I believe grease still has been very crucial for us in general for the post-quantum key migration on the web. But the point is, and something I want to and which highlights a broader takeaway, especially for developers and protocol designers, is the importance of crypto agility, which we have heard a lot in this conference so far, but crypto agility in software design as well. Ensuring adaptability for evolving cryptographical needs and standards in line how, for example, in how grease has helped us so far. I mean, we can use same kind of efforts in other areas of software as well today in practice. So going on to the next lesson, lesson number 3 is to not assume implementations always fully adhere to the specifications. I mean, in TLS 1.3 standard, or the standard mandates support for a mechanism which is called a hello retry request, which is used by servers for renegotiating connection parameters. This allows the client to send an updated ClientHello message with the new values. HHR is particularly useful for the post-quantum migration and has been useful for us as well. For example, if a client initially offers only a classical key agreement, but the server prefers post-quantum one, the server can send an HHR back to the client and tell the client to switch to a post-quantum secure connection on the same connection without creating a new one. So this provides a safe and seamless way for servers to tell clients to upgrade their connections or prefer post-quantum ones and transition to happen. But as part of the measurements, there were more surprises. In our scans, we found that around 0.32% of the servers did not properly implement hello retry request mechanism. The server would ask the client to renegotiate, but when the client tried to, the buggy server would reject the second updated ClientHello on the connection. The broken HHR behavior we saw was far more common, in fact, than the fragmented ClientHello issue that is more popularly or typically known with large key shares or signatures. And in fact, the issue is like such TLS stacks are actually non-compliant to the TLS 1.3 standard in the first place. And the post-quantum, like the PQC is only adding as a stress test for surfacing such bugs up, which already existed in our softwares. So as a more concrete example or use case, we found a similar retry bug in the Rustless library, which should have the fix in the latest version. So if you're using if your software relies on it, and if you're using the latest version, you don't have to worry about that. But it's still important to keep your libraries up to date, since a lot of patches are happening as we're dealing with and working towards this post-quantum migration and solving the side effects. Right. So one thing I want to emphasize is the importance to start your migration testing now. And for TLS, there are many open source clients that we have and we can use. For example, let's take an example of Boring SSL. It's an open source TLS library, and the tool allows us to specify different parameters, such as the different key agreements that we can use. For example, in the command I have, we are sending the hybrid of MLK and X2119, and the output of the server shows that it's accepted the curve and completed the handshake successfully. So it could be just as simple as that, like as part of your initial testing. And given that, there's just make sure like there's no interception proxy in between that is mingling with your connection. We also have an open source version of the Boring SSL fork that allows you to test for the hello retry request bug that I talked about before. So if you encounter, and so it can be used for that failure bucket testing. And if you encounter such issues during your own testing, please make sure to let your vendors know and contact your vendors so that you can have a patch up which will allow the community and other people who are relying on that same piece of software. So beneath the surface, there can be further challenges when you're testing for your post-quantum migration, especially when they add an element of non-determinism. For example, use of load balancers are ubiquitous. We have them everywhere in different networks. And we have seen a lot of times in our scans, there would be some servers or backend servers sitting behind load balancers that would have heterogeneous TLS stacks. So one of the backend servers accept a post-quantum key agreement or post-quantum connection, and other one with the same on the back end of the same load balancer would not. And so this adds a layer of non-determinism when you're testing different servers. Similarly, another thing that came up during our migration testing are atomic fragments. So this is a concept that applies for IPv6. And atomic fragments are actually datagrams that have a fragment header, but they're actually not fragmented. I won't go into detail why that's the case, but the recent RFC 8200 IPv6 specification, it doesn't forbid atomic fragments, but it removes any suggestion that they should be used. And it says that it should be processed as a self-contained datagram, as if the fragment extension does not exist. Well, so this should be not a concern, but we found out actually that one of our own load balancers was failing due to these atomic fragments, and it was actually treating these fragments as fragments. And so it turned out there was a bug in the Linux kernel that we had a patch and had it fixed in the upstream version as well. Right. So another important thing to consider is there are multiple software and there are multiple hardware devices along a path of a connection that can cause some irregularities to happen. And each of those pieces of software can have their own configuration and can act as a source of weirdness for when you're doing your testing. So it's important to understand what pieces, especially important for internal connections, what pieces of software and hardware are involved in that connection. So as a concrete example of the last point and how the network adds to the weirdness, we saw that during our scans, some servers could successfully parse the fragmented ClientHello packets containing the post-quantum key agreements, which would suggest that they're compatible for post-quantum secure connections. However, when packet loss occurred, and causing the second fragment to arrive before the first one on the server. The same server failed to handle the out-of-order delivery. So they were able to reassemble when the delivery was in the right order, but for out-of-order packets, they failed the connection. So for instance, like we saw such an issue with the Palo Alto firewall, and there's already a bug filed at the Chromium bug tracker, which is being looked at for making that piece of software post-quantum compatible. Right. So what about PQ's signature or certificates, right? So we look at the performance impact, something my colleague Luculent also shared in his session yesterday, but we found out that digital signatures, as you know, are huge. And so we tried to approximate them by adding dummy data to the certificate chain, as I talked about, that we returned to our clients. We found that for every 1 kilobyte of data that we added to the certificate chain, or the TLS, it slows down the TLS handshake at 1.5% at the median. Therefore, given the set of signatures we have available with MLDSA or Falcon, we can still expect some performance, these performance issues, and which might cause more adoption delays. Like there are several workarounds that have been proposed, such as using removing intermediate certificates, using multi-tree certificates, and we'll see like how those work out as we implement those and experiment with those. Right. So to bring this all together, it's crucial to understand that the post-quantum cryptography itself isn't to blame for the challenges that we are facing. Like this migration, just similar to the TLS 1.2 to TLS 1.3, is just acting as a stress test on our systems, and something it's just uncovering hidden issues that have been there all along, and it's just improving the reliability of our software and service as a byproduct. And this outcome will ultimately result in stronger and more resilient implementations. So let's not forget, this won't be the last migration industry faces, so staying vigilant to the pitfalls of ossification is extremely important. In reality, it would be dishonest for me to just say all our findings are fully conclusive. There's still a long tail of unknowns yet to be remaining, to be investigated. It's possible, it's impossible that we catalog every possible piece of software that's involved in the connection. In a sense, it's surprises are inevitable. And especially as we move to deploying post-quantum signatures, I think more surprises will come up. So one key takeaway is to avoid making assumptions about where issues may arise. Without proper observability, mitigating these challenges becomes incredibly difficult. For example, our own origin server remediation efforts showed that it was very challenging to have them resolve if we don't have access to the piece of faulty software. And since we do not have access to their data, we have to wait for our customers' feedback and their update cycle. So it's important we start now, and it's important to start early, and it's important that we have proper visibility. And it's important to also know that the intent isn't just the TLS. I've been talking about the Web PKI and TLS specifically, but for post-quantum readiness, it spans far beyond that. And it spans every corner of our ecosystem, and addressing these challenges collectively will help us in overall. But to summarize, I hope our findings, even if they're not too groundbreaking, will offer some practical value for our guide for the broader migration for post-quantum security connections. These lessons are important, and also they're also very easy to forget. And so, for lesson number one, bugs with handling ClientHello messages with large key agreements are very common with PQC and cause unexpected connection failures. Lesson number two, extensibility in TLS has been foundational to its adaptability and foundational for post-quantum migration. But it's important to know that we need to avoid assuming fixed values and parameters in our protocols and implementation specifically. And so crypto agility is essential, even more important for post-quantum certificates. And lastly, for lesson three, and finally, remember that non-consistent implementations do exist. Software standards can deviate, so it's important we test our implementations and also test our graceful fallbacks promptly. Right, so this brings me to the end of my presentation. There are a couple of references, and if you want to reach out, you can reach out to our alias at askresearch@cloudflare.com or reach out to me directly at suleiman@cloudflare.com. Yeah, thank you so much, and happy to take more questions.
Awesome, thank you very much. Very timely topic as well, seeing as I just read through a new executive order that dropped in the US that actually deals with implementation of TLS 1.3, post-quantum cryptography, and some changes to some of the timelines. So with that, any questions in the room? Phil, do we have any questions that are online?
We do. For Syed, can you elaborate what you mean by customer origin server in Cloudflare systems when you mention the PQ support less than 1%?
Yeah. So, so if you see here, like our upstream connection from Cloudflare to Orange server, we're acting as a client. So we did a scanning of our customer servers that we don't have access to. So those are all the servers that are on the web and providing content for our end users. So that is the area. The part number 3 is the area that we're talking about, and we have been doing scans at that side.
Excellent. I know we have one more question in the room here, so we'll take that in the room, and then we'll move on to our next session.
I could ask, that's right. So, hey, Sid, should I go first? Okay. So, Said, the 0.02% failure from the fragmented ClientHellos, these fragmented ClientHellos were classical, right? These servers were doing classical TLS, not post-quantum. Is that right?
So for this number, for when you use post-quantum, like the hybrid key agreement, that is the case most common when we have the fragmented ClientHello messages. So
yeah, but the scans you have there, were you sending a classical bogus ClientHello that was fragmenting, or were they doing Kyber?
Yeah. So we were using different type of key agreements, but we saw that this was consistently failing if we used any bogus one or a valid one. In either case, they were failing on fragmented ClientHello.
So I'm asking because if these servers, if the problem's on the server side, some load balancer or the server, when they migrate, they will have to fix that. So I'm wondering if this number is inflated for the servers that haven't migrated already. Not inflated, but in a sense, they will deal with it because when they migrate, they will see it, you know? So do you have an intuition, or is it middle boxes in the middle that they don't control?
Right. We did some feedback loop with some of our customers, and we actually reached out to them to understand where the failure is happening, so they can help investigate to us. But for us, a lot of feedback we got, it seems to be a lot of software that they're running on their own infrastructure. And but a lot of response we got was quite mixed. One thing is clear: people don't really know exactly how the connections are processing. So there's still this ambiguity, but we believe a lot of this on server side. But it could be a middleware, we don't know. But at least for some of our customers who did reach out, a lot of them we were able to track some of them down. So it could be a mix. I can't say for sure. It's only on the server side.
So thank you. And we'll take one more quick question, hopefully quick answer, because we're running a couple of minutes over here.
So as you noted, it seemed like protocol adherence is one of the major issues. Do you have any recommendations for TLS protocol conformance test suites where authors can test their implementations, or is this something that the ecosystem needs to be building?
Yeah, for example, I did talk about some TLS clients. For example, Boring SSL, I talked about that one. So it still requires someone to manually have enough information to run that client and to run that piece of software. But we have been talked with some other collaborators in which maybe we can have some open source version of where you can just enter the name of a domain and it does all the testing for you. For example, such as how SSL Labs does the testing for different TLS version and suits. So yeah, we can expect something of that to be deployed. I'm not sure if it will be from Cloudflare, but maybe some other partner that we work out with in this year.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
At SSL.com, trust is what we do. We provide PKI solutions, identity trust services, and cloud code signing to keep your data and software secure. Secure documents at scale with high-volume document e-sealing. Join us at the PQC Conference 2025 to explore secure solutions. SSL.com. Securing trust, enabling innovation. Visit SSL.com.